Thank you, Mr. President. I came to the floor tonight, and I'm going to relieve you in a few minutes, so I promise I won't go on for very long, to talk about the FDA reauthorization bill that's before the Senate. I was sorry that we couldn't get it to a vote today. I'm hopeful that tomorrow we will be able to, because from my perspective, as someone who has only been here for a few years, the committee process that led to the creation of this bill, I think, is a model for how this town ought to be working. The conversation we've had here for so many months and even years has felt decoupled from the conversations I've been having in my town hall meetings and across the country about the challenges that we need to address. This gap has been miles apart, but I think in this piece of legislation we've actually found something responsive to patients, responsive to consumers, and responsive to the bioscience industry that's so important to my state and so many states across the country. Chairman Harkin and Ranking Member Enzi deserve enormous credit for running an excellent process that's enabled this senator, and I think others on the committee, to be responsive to what our constituents say they want, which is a modern FDA with improved patient safety and innovation. We've also had committee members that were interested in rolling up their sleeves and doing hard work together, irrespective of which party that they were in. And we've been able to work through a markup with virtually no partisanship. This has been a uniquely fine process, which is why we've had such great momentum toward a full extension and in what I call the land of flickering lights, because the standard of success around here has become keep the government running for one more month, keep this extension in place for 2 more months. We actually have on the floor a rational and responsible bill that's a 5-year extension of the Food and Drug Administration authority. Tonight I only want to talk about 2 aspects of the bill. There are a number that we worked on, but tonight I'll spare you with the rest because I have to replace the presiding officer. In 2010, I introduced a bill called the Drug Safety and Accountability Act. Chairman Harkin and Ranking Member Enzi took notice, and we were able to form a working group to address serious problems in the FDA's statutory authority. FDA laws that are supposed to protect our domestic drug supply were created in 1938 and desperately needed to be updated for the 21st century. Back then, the lines of commerce were based on 48 states. Now we live in an era where over 80% of the active ingredients in our pharmaceuticals in our drug supply are being manufactured abroad. Couple that with the FDA laws that force them to inspect American facilities every 2 years, but have no mandate on how often they inspect facilities overseas. The GAO, the Government Accounting Office, has found that FDA could only keep pace with inspecting the most high-risk overseas facilities, the places where our moms and dads are getting the pharmaceuticals for our children once every 9 years. Once every 9 years. So patients taking their pills have no idea whether the ingredients in their drug were made in China or India, or if they were ever inspected. Our American manufacturers are operating on an uneven playing field. They have to expect a surprise FDA inspection every 2 years on average here and make sure they're following all their good manufacturing practices when their foreign counterparts don't have to worry about FDA visiting them for a decade, if ever, because they can delay or refuse FDA inspections because they're overseas. Patients groups and the industry came together to try to change that, and this bill does change all of that. It would implement a risk-based inspection schedule for both foreign and domestic manufacturing sites. It would make sure that drug manufacturers know who's in their supply chain every step of the way. And for the first time, if you're abroad and you refuse or delay inspection without a fair reason, the FDA can refuse to let your product in this country. These are all the steps American families already think we have in place to protect them. I can't tell you how many town halls I've had where people have been shocked to learn that the products that they have in their medicine cabinets have never been inspected by anybody. This will change that, and it's a thoughtful, common sense approach that I think all of the constituents to this debate support. So we need to make sure that happens. I also want to talk about something called track and trace. American families also want to know what happens to their pills that can mean the difference between life and death. Once they leave the manufacturer, enter the country, and change hands several times. Right now, we can know a lot more from a barcode on a gallon of milk than from a barcode on medications. And that seems absurd to people at home. And I want to take a moment again here to thank the chair and ranking member for their commitment to working together to meet the challenge of developing a uniform traceability system. This is something that has been worked on for over a decade in this town, and we are finally this close to making it the law of the land. And I want to thank in particular my colleague Richard Burr, a Republican from North Carolina, for being such a great partner in this work. FDA, the HELP committee staff, Pew and other stakeholders across the supply chain have been meeting for weeks with my staff and with Senator Burr's staff, all in good faith. And our goal is to finalize a plan after we wrap up the Senate bill. And since I see that there's no one else on the floor and I have a few more minutes, let me talk about another very exciting part. Sorry, my colleague from New Hampshire is here, so I'm going to yield to her. But I will tell you that if we pass this bill, for the first time, the FDA is going to be able to apply 21st century science to the approval of drugs, particularly drugs that are breakthrough medications, drugs that we know will work in one subset of population, even if they might not work so well in another. This is very important to cancer patients all across the United States who are looking to access these breakthrough therapies. So from the standpoint of driving an industry in this country that in my own state has a median salary of roughly $74,000, and for the point of view of patient health and protecting our supply chain, this FDA reauthorization is a must-pass. I thank the members of the committee and especially the chairman and the ranking member for establishing a model, really, for how this Senate should operate. And with that, I yield the floor to the senator from New Hampshire. And I thank her for her patience.
Mr. President.
The senator from New Hampshire.
Mr. President, I ask consent to speak as if in morning business.
Without objection.
Before I do, I should say that I applaud my colleague from Colorado, Senator Bennet, for the work that he's done on this FDA legislation. And as he pointed out, the good work that's been done by our colleagues on both sides of the aisle to get this bill, to move it forward and to have a responsible and reasonable amendment process. So I hope that we can move it forward this week and actually see its passage on the floor, because it is so important to so many people who are dependent on what the Food and Drug Administration does in this country.